Chuck Norris doesn't dodge bullets. Bullets dodge Chuck Norris.
Chuck Norris doesn't wear a watch because he tells the time.
Chuck Norris is so fast he can run around the world and punch himself in the back of the head.
Remember when Saturday nights meant one thing? A cowboy hat, a black belt, and a roundhouse kick that settled absolutely everything? From 1993 to 2001 on CBS, Walker, Texas Ranger starred Chuck Norris as Cordell Walker, alongside Clarence Gilyard and Sheree J. Wilson, and somehow turned straightforward good versus evil storytelling into one of the most reliable things on television. Justice didn't need a courtroom here, just the right angle and a perfectly timed kick. Behind the scenes, though, more strange, surprising, and downright unbelievable stories than anyone realized, including one that accidentally made someone tens of millions of dollars for 2 weeks of work, and another that turned the whole show into a late-night comedy legend. Hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming. Drop a comment. What's the first thing you think of when someone says Walker, Texas Ranger? Before we get into this one, we want to take a moment to acknowledge the passing of Chuck Norris, a legend who gave an entire generation one of the most unforgettable heroes television has ever produced. This video is a celebration of that legacy. They say no one escapes death. Death, apparently, wasn't briefed on Chuck Norris. And by the time it figured that out, Chuck had already made his first move. Now, let's roundhouse kick our way into this countdown. Number 15. It was basically the same guy from another movie, just cleaner. If you'd caught Lone Wolf McQuade back in 1983, something about Walker, Texas Ranger probably felt very familiar, and you weren't losing your mind. Walker wasn't exactly a brand new character. He was more of a renovation project. In Lone Wolf McQuade, Chuck Norris played J.J. McQuade, a Texas Ranger, former Marine, certified leave-me-alone energy specialist. Quiet, stubborn, solves problems with his fist before the paperwork hits the desk. Same code, same lone wolf instincts, same roundhouse. The difference was the packaging. McQuade was rough around the edges, a beat-up trailer in the middle of nowhere, zero social niceties, full grizzly loner energy. Walker, clean slate, moral compass, no vices, justice delivered with the quiet confidence of a man who's never once doubted himself. This was 90s network primetime, where your action hero had to throw a perfect jab and set a good example doing it. Walker, Texas Ranger didn't reinvent the wheel. It took the same wheel, pressure washed it, and made it safe for families to watch together after dinner. Number 14. It turned the death slot into a power move. Saturday night television in the 90s had a reputation, and not a good one. If a network buried your show there, that wasn't a scheduling decision. That was a goodbye letter. Then Walker showed up and didn't get the memo. Not only did it survive Saturday nights, it owned them. CBS built an entire night around it, pairing Walker with Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman, and Touched by an Angel for a 3-hour block of wholesomeness, moral clarity, and enough life lessons to carry you through the week. By the mid-90s, Walker was sitting in the top 25 most watched programs on television, top 20 in multiple seasons. In the slot, everyone said it couldn't be done. While the rest of primetime got edgier, Walker stayed simple. Bad guy, Walker, roundhouse, credits. No cliffhangers, no ambiguity, just resolution every single week. Number 13. It almost got canceled before it even started. By the time Walker, Texas Ranger became a Saturday night institution, it felt like it had always existed, like it was simply inevitable. It was not inevitable. The show was originally tied to Conan Television, the same company that spent the 80s pumping out wall-to-wall action movies at a pace that suggested nobody there ever slept. Ninjas, mercenaries, explosions. Conan was practically a genre unto itself. But by 1993, Conan was collapsing, out of money and out of options. Production didn't just slow, it shut down completely. A memo went out, cameras stopped, the whole thing frozen after just 3 episodes. CBS was suddenly holding a show with no production company behind it. So they did what nervous networks do, aired the pilot and waited. The 2-hour premiere pulled in a 16.5 rating and a 27 share, dominating its time slot. Suddenly, nobody was walking away from the table. CBS partnered with Columbia Pictures Television to take over production and deficit financing, a joint rescue that got the show back on its feet. 8 seasons, 203 episodes, one of CBS's most reliable properties of the decade. All of it almost never happened. Number 12. This was basically Chuck Norris's show, in every way. Walker, Texas Ranger always felt more deliberate than the other crime dramas crowding the 90s schedule. Like every episode followed a specific set of rules nobody had posted, but everyone respected anyway. That wasn't an accident. Chuck Norris wasn't just the guy delivering kicks on camera. He was an executive producer with a clear vision. To Norris, Walker wasn't a cop show. It was a modern-day Western. Right and wrong were never up for debate. The hero had a code he actually lived by, and justice always arrived. sometimes through a door, occasionally through a window. When networks pushed for edgier storylines, Norris pushed back. His standard was simple. If you couldn't watch it with your kids in the room, it didn't belong on the show. When Norris Brothers Entertainment took over in the later seasons, his brother Aaron ran a tight ship, on time, on budget, every single week. The moral framework never wavered, and that standard never moved an inch. Number 11, he didn't even want to sing the theme song. If you watched Walker, Texas Ranger for more than 5 minutes, that theme song is now permanently living in your head rent-free. The eyes of a ranger are upon you. But here's something most people never knew. Chuck Norris didn't want to be the one singing it. His original plan was to hand the vocals to his friend, Randy Travis. And honestly, that's not a bad instinct. Randy Travis in his prime could make a grocery list sound like a spiritual experience. CBS had other ideas. They thought nothing says, "This is his universe," quite like having the man himself deliver the theme. There was just one complication. Singer wasn't exactly the first thing people associated with him. Norris later admitted he'd never been so nervous in his life, and it took him 2 full days to record the track. His approach? Johnny Cash style. Not a traditional vocal performance. More of a deep, deliberate delivery that felt less like a song and more like a warning issued by someone who meant every word. The vocal version was late to the party. The first 2 seasons used an instrumental, but once it locked in, it never left. Turned out the guy who didn't want to sing the theme ended up delivering the only version anyone can imagine. Number 10. The fights were real, and they were teaching you something. Something always felt a little different about the fights on Walker, Texas Ranger. Not flashier than other shows. Actually, the opposite. They just felt more real. While most 90s action shows hid behind rapid cuts and camera tricks, Walker let the camera stay wide. Chuck Norris had spent decades training across multiple disciplines: Tang Soo Do, Taekwondo, Judo. He knew exactly what he was doing, and the show let you see it. Clean technique, no sleight of hand. You were actually watching the moves. And here's the part nobody was clocking in real time. Mixed martial arts wouldn't hit mainstream America until the UFC built momentum in the late 90s. Grappling, ground fighting, submission holds. Most TV audiences had never seen any of it. Walker was already showing it to them. In 1995, Carlos Machado, cousin to the Gracies and one of the pioneers of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in America, relocated to Dallas at Norris's invitation. He assisted with fight choreography, appeared in dozens of episodes, and even taught BJJ out of the actual studio where the show filmed. The arrangement had a certain poetry. Machado was Norris's own instructor, and week after week, he showed up on screen to get beaten by his own student. Everyone remembers Walker for the roundhouse kicks. Fair enough, but from season 4 onward, the show was quietly giving Saturday night audiences a legitimate Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu education. Most of them just didn't realize it until years later. Number 9, it was a before they were famous factory. There's a specific joy in going back to Walker, Texas Ranger today that has nothing to do with the cases or the kicks. It's the freeze frame moment. You're watching some random episode, troubled teenager, Walker intervenes, and something about a face stops you cold. Wait, is that? Yeah, it is. Walker churned through dozens of guest roles a year during a window when Hollywood was constantly cycling young talent through whatever would have them, which means the show became, entirely by accident, one of the best time capsules of future stardom that era produced. Tobey Maguire showed up in season 2, 1994, an episode called The Prodigal Son. He played Danny Parsons, a teenager tangled up with drug dealers who Walker steps in to protect. This was 8 years before he put on the Spider-Man suit. At this point, he was just a kid trying to build a resume, and Walker was one of the places you went to do exactly that. Haley Joel Osment appeared in season 6, playing a boy who unknowingly contracted AIDS through his mother. Heavy material for a Saturday night action show. This was October 1997, nearly 2 years before The Sixth Sense made him one of the most talked about young actors in the country. Then there's Selena Gomez. She appeared in the 2005 reunion TV movie Trial by Fire, early enough that the Disney Channel chapter of her life was still just getting started. The show wasn't trying to be a launching pad, it just kept accidentally becoming one. Number 8, what you gonna do when Walker comes for you? By the final season, Walker, Texas Ranger had already proven it would try just about anything. Case in point, Hulk Hogan. In a 2001 episode called Division Street, the Hulkster showed up as Boomer Knight, a born-again ex-con and former gang member who'd done his time, found God somewhere in the middle of it, and come out the other side running a Christian community center in one of Dallas's toughest neighborhoods. Not exactly the character you'd expect Hulk Hogan to be playing on a Saturday night CBS drama, but Walker's world had a way of absorbing larger-than-life personalities and pointing them toward redemption arcs. Boomer and Walker teamed up to organize basketball tournaments between rival gang members, trying to steer kids away from a local drug dealer. When Boomer became a target and ended up kidnapped, Walker did what Walker does. Problem solved efficiently. For fans who grew up watching Hogan on one screen and Walker on another, seeing them share a scene was exactly the kind of crossover that stopped you mid-channel surf. Nobody expected it. That was kind of the whole point. Quick pause. If you grew up planning on the couch every Saturday night waiting for everyone's favorite horse riding, karate trained Texas Ranger, hit that like button. You've earned it. Subscribe if you haven't, and tell us in the comments what's your favorite Chuck Norris joke. We know you've got at least one. All right, back to Dallas. Number 7. That youth program wasn't just a storyline. It was real. Norris had already been running a real nonprofit for nearly 3 years before the show aired. In 1990, he founded the Kick Drugs Out of America Foundation.
Hello, I'm Chuck Norris, and I'd like to tell you about the Kick Drugs Out of America Foundation, which I started in August of 1990.
Built around one idea: use martial arts to give at-risk kids something worth showing up for. Discipline, structure, a reason to choose a different path. When Walker took off, Norris brought that mission with him, straight into the show's DNA. Those mentorship storylines weren't filler. They were a reflection of something he was already doing in real life. And the program didn't stop when the show did. In 2003, it was renamed Kickstart Kids. Today, it operates in over 59 schools across Texas, serving more than 9,500 students every year. Since its founding, it has reached more than 100,000 at-risk Texas students. The fights were entertaining, the villains were satisfying to watch go down. But the thing Chuck Norris built that actually lasted didn't require a single trained kick. Number 6, the most expensive 2-week job in Hollywood history. Before Paul Haggis was winning Academy Awards, he was just another working TV writer. Different strokes, the facts of life, 30-something, established but nowhere near a household name. One of those gigs was a quick rewrite on the Walker Texas Ranger pilot. Less than 2 weeks. The kind of job you finish and barely remember. CBS never even used his script. He rewrote it, they thanked him, and went a completely different direction. Forgettable freelance job by any normal measure, except the rewrite earned him a creator credit. In television, that's a stake in everything that follows, including syndication. Walker Texas Ranger was credited as created by Christopher Conan, Leslie Grief, Paul Haggis, and Albert S. Ruddy. 4 names, one attached to a script nobody ever used. 8 seasons, worldwide reruns. Every time it aired, that credit was still there. The estimate? Somewhere between $30 and $50 million. For work the network threw in the bin. Haggis went on to write, direct, and produce Crash, winning 2 Academy Awards in 2006. One of the most sought-after names in Hollywood. And he still woke up in a cold sweat, picturing his tombstone. And on it, after everything, just one line: creator of Walker Texas Ranger. Number 5. He didn't just play a Texas Ranger, he became one. There's a certain kind of actor who disappears into a role so completely that audiences stop separating the two. Chuck Norris did it so thoroughly that multiple institutions felt compelled to make it official. In 2007, the Commandant of the Marine Corps made Norris an honorary United States Marine, earned not through the show, but through years of real-world troop support, including a 2006 USO tour to Iraq that Marine Corps officials described as one of the best received they'd ever seen. Then Texas got involved. On December 2nd, 2010, the Texas governor formally bestowed upon Chuck and Aaron Norris the title of Honorary Texas Ranger Captain. Not just Ranger, Captain. The governor put it plainly. Together, the Norris brothers had helped elevate the Rangers to what he called truly mythical status. And then the state went one step further. In 2017, the Texas Senate named Norris an honorary Texan, cementing what everyone already understood. This wasn't a man who played a Texan and moved on. He'd bought a ranch near Navasota and became genuinely embedded in the state's identity. Most actors play a role and move on. Chuck Norris played a Texas Ranger, and the Marines, the state of Texas, and the Texas Rangers themselves all responded by saying the roles were basically his to keep. Number 4, they tried to build a Walker universe before that was even a thing. Before shared universes became the default setting for every successful franchise, Walker Texas Ranger was quietly attempting the same thing. It started with 2 new characters in Season 5. Trent Malloy, Army Sergeant, martial arts instructor, refused to carry a firearm. His father, Reverend Thunder Malloy, was a man of peace, and that worldview followed Trent home. Carlos Sandoval, Dallas detective and Trent's oldest friend. They showed up in a feature-length backdoor pilot that felt like a tryout. It worked. Sons of Thunder launched as its own series. Grittier tone, private investigation territory. Then Walker crossed over with Martial Law, starring Sammo Hung. Characters traveled between shows, storylines connected. For a brief window in the late 90s, a genuine shared TV universe was taking shape. And then it wasn't. Sons of Thunder was canceled after 6 episodes. CBS cited budget concerns and passed anyway, which made even less sense to the producers given that the show was outperforming what Walker itself had been pulling in those 2 same seasons. Number 3, the show never left Texas. Most network dramas of Walker's era filmed in Los Angeles. It was just the default. The studios were there, the crews were there, the infrastructure was there. Walker never did any of that. The production was rooted in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, with Mercury Studios in Irving as its home base and locations spread across the region. Over time, it became one of the largest employers in the regional film industry, pumping millions into the local economy every single year. For the most part, the setting wasn't a backdrop they recreated on a soundstage somewhere in Burbank. It was the actual operation. The crews were local, the locations were real. Dallas wasn't just where Cordell Walker lived, it was where the whole show lived. Chuck Norris insisted on it. He wanted the show to be authentic, and authenticity meant Texas. Number 2, a random lever turned it into comedy gold. When Walker Texas Ranger wrapped in 2001, the safe money was on a quiet fade-out. Syndication, trivia night. The, oh yeah, that show category. This is not what happened. After NBC merged with Universal, Late Night with Conan O'Brien gained access to Walker clips, and Conan's staff introduced the Walker Texas Ranger lever.
People are like, dude, more Walker, man.
A freestanding red pole behind the desk. Pull it, a clip plays. No setup, no explanation, no context at all. Stripped of their storylines and moral frameworks, the clips revealed something nobody had clocked the first time around. Just how gloriously, unintentionally intense Walker could look when you had absolutely no idea what was happening or why. Norris leaned into it fully, showing up in summer 2004, shooting Conan with a prop gun, then producing his own lever with a backstage clip of him beating up the host. Fully in on the joke. The bit didn't end because it stopped being funny. It ended because Sony Pictures Television and CBS owned the series. Universal only had syndication rights. Once the actors realized how widely the clips were airing, they demanded union residuals. Producer Jeff Ross told Conan it would cost millions to continue. The Walker lever wasn't retired because it ran out of material. It was retired because it was too funny, too often in front of too many people. Even as an accidental comedy prop, Walker Texas Ranger found a way to be impossible to ignore. Number 1, the internet turned him into an actual myth. In early 2005, the internet made a decision about Chuck Norris. It started on Something Awful forums, where users had been running a joke thread built around Vin Diesel. A Long Island high school senior named Ian Spector was already on Something Awful. He built a Vin Diesel random fact generator off the same thread. It got 10,000 hits overnight. When the Vin Diesel moment faded, Spector ran a poll for a replacement. Norris wasn't on it. Users wrote him in anyway. Spector built the Chuck Norris version, and that one didn't just get 10,000 hits, it got millions. Chuck Norris doesn't do push-ups, he pushes the earth down. Chuck Norris doesn't wear a watch, he decides what time it is. When the boogeyman goes to sleep, he checks under his bed for Chuck Norris. MySpace profiles, email chains, printed out and read aloud. As Spector explained, Norris worked because he already had that toughness, that disciplined career. The joke system had a foundation to build on. The foundation was Walker Texas Ranger, a character who never struggled, never doubted, never had an off day. The internet didn't invent that image. It just grabbed it and ran. Norris's relationship with the phenomenon was complicated. Publicly, he leaned in, appearing on the Best Damn Sports Show period, sharing his personal favorite fact involving Mount Rushmore. Behind the scenes, he sued Penguin USA in 2007, settled the following year, then published his own competing book in 2009. On his website, he redirected credit for his toughness to God and Jesus Christ, embraced the jokes in public, sued over them in private, monetized them himself, which honestly is a very Chuck Norris way to handle things. A man whose star had been fading since 2001 became more universally recognized after the show than during it. People who'd never seen a single episode still knew exactly who Chuck Norris was. Not as an actor, not as a martial artist, as a myth, an American folk hero in a cowboy hat, and that made him legendary. And there you have it, 15 facts that prove Walker Texas Ranger was a whole lot more than a guy in a cowboy hat kicking people through walls. It was a show built on one man's vision, held together through genuine chaos, and somehow became more legendary after it ended than it ever was while it was running. So which fact caught you off guard the most? Drop it in the comments, and while you're down there, tell us, did Walker ever actually lose a fight? Well, wait. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this one with someone who still hears that theme song in their head. The eyes of the Ranger are still upon you. Until next time, this is Remember When.